I did not deck you. I was hitting you. But you're fine.
What is the red pill? At its core, it's men getting together and swapping notes. For over a decade now, men have realized just how much we've been led to believe things that aren't very good for us, and this is where game comes in. In this case, I break down relationships and show you how to look at them through a more masculine or red-pilled lens. In this case, it's a bit special. We're going through some celebrity stuff. So strap yourselves in and welcome. Men swapping notes, iron sharpening iron. Welcome to the locker room.
It did mean something, and it does mean something. I didn't get married to you fucking 17 more fights and it's fucking over with. We got married, I knew the fucking fights weren't gonna stop, but I thought maybe it would curb them a little.
I want the security back. I freak out. And cannot make normal decisions, calm decisions, or ones from the heart where I'm thinking of you more than me when I feel like you're splitting on me all the time, when the marriage is on a roll. I make the same mistake about throwing a marriage around. I won't do it again. I'm not going to do it again. Okay?
Please. I'm
not, I promise. But there's something so anxiety provoking and scary and malicious and really just turns everything over when you split all the time. Please, if you really don't want to fight and you're not just trying to hurt me, which sometimes it is that, if you really love me and you do care about this, please find a good way to do it, one that's respectful.
A couple terms before we get started. Good girl. This is something I've borrowed from the book Practical Female Psychology by David Franco and others. What it does is it breaks down girls into general relationship archetypes, in which case there's the materialista, the adventurous, and in this case, the good girl. So what is a good girl? Well, a good girl is the kind of person that treats the relationship as the thing to value, not the people inside of it. You're going to see tons of examples if you listen to the full recording where she talks about how do we fix the marriage? How do we make the marriage work? The marriage is treated about slightly better than actually he's being treated right now. And it's a common facet of good girls. It's funny because most people assume when you talk good girl, you think of that traditional housewife type archetype, but that's not the case. In this case, this one here is just as willing to treat the relationship as sacrosanct as the most Donna Reedish girl out there. But just know that when it comes to a girl's motivations, the good girl generally tends to lean towards the perception of the relationship or people's perception of them being a power couple in this case. Alpha behaviors. I love this one because not a single channel of anybody I've seen cover this has even bothered to look at it properly. We talk about alpha behaviors and beta behaviors often, and most people equate that to mean alpha males, as in the tall guy with the chiseled jaw, the rock star good looks, or beta behaviors, which are generally seen as unattractive. That is a huge misrepresentation of what we're talking about here. Simply put, alpha behaviors are the type of behaviors that make a girl build desire, make her wet, sexual interest. You're going to see a ton of examples throughout the whole audio of this where she basically gets emotionally riled up to the point where she's manic. Now, almost everybody has broken this down to her being bipolar or some other character defect on her part. They do that because they can dismiss this person outright and not have to deal with their own shortcomings or, in this case, too much of a good thing. Say what you want about Depp, but he's created enough alpha behaviors in his marriage that the girl is absolutely terrified of him leaving. She mentions it multiple times that when he walks away during a fight, that's the stuff that drives her up the wall, and I believe she admitted to smacking him around at one point from it. The behaviors in this case are very extreme, and most guys are never going to get this level of dedication from a girl, but that's because most guys don't have those alpha behaviors that absolutely make a girl terrified of losing you. And it's ideally the goal that every man wants to have in his life, peppered with just enough comfort to keep it from going crazy. Communication is bunk. I actually sat there and listened through 45 minutes of communication, and it was completely wasted on everybody but me who's creating this video. Amber can talk about whatever she wants to talk about. Johnny will talk about whatever he wants to talk about, but they're not communicating. They're just talking. His frontal lobe is talking about his grievances. Her frontal lobe is talking about her grievances. They're talking past each other. They make all these promises, but here's the problem. And marriage counselors will tell you this too. When a person makes a promise in that kind of frontal lobe communication situation, as soon as emotions even begin to spiral out of control or elevate, which they're prone to do because rockstar Johnny Depp leaves when he has problems, and it makes her anxiety-ridden and anxious. As soon as this happens, all that frontal lobe stuff goes out the window and they go back to instinct, which in this case is her fighting for more attention from him and him being more averse to conflict. And that's why you see these things end up with multiple situations of violence, or as he puts it, 17 fights, which I'm sure they've had way more than that. But this is the problem with communication. It doesn't actually communicate. The advice. Well, I'm not going to be under any illusions. Johnny Depp's not going to listen to this. Amber's not going to listen to this. But you're going to listen to this. And here's what you need to take away from this message. So I'll just frame it as advice for Johnny. The problem here is you've got a girl who's anxiety-ridden about losing you. Now, yeah, we're talking about actors, so a lot of that is bravado and acting. But if you look in between the lines, you look at the subtext, it generally boils down to a single point. She is terrified of losing him, and every time he pulls those behaviors he pulls, which is her interpretation of him leaving, she freaks out. Now, the freakouts end up becoming more and more violent because those are the ones that eventually work. If you'll notice, when they deal with things calmly, he'll generally leave and won't think anything of it because to him, there's no problem because nobody's freaking out. The same as when you have a child and you tell a child no. If a child's not used to hearing no, a child is going to start freaking out because they know eventually you're going to cave into their demands. And this is the problem that you end up in these situations. You set these boundaries, but they only last insofar as you're emotionally able to handle them. In this case, a much better strategy is, in these fights for comfort, and this is all assuming that you want to keep her around. It's entirely possible that this girl is so conflict avoidant or conflict anxious or whatever. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose somebody based on a small audio clip of something. But assuming she's worth keeping around, de-escalating this situation strategically is actually a good thing for relationships. I mean, say what you will about a girl trying to throw a frying pan at you, but you know she's invested. And you probably get the best sex of your life in these kind of situations. The problem comes with a guy not knowing how to turn off his alpha and add beta or comfort behaviors to bring it down to a more manageable level. In this case, in those times where she's absolutely ecstatic about losing him and really wants to emote, give clear directions. Treat it like you would as a police officer when he's making a high-tension arrest. Simple commands, direct commands, de-escalate the situation. What you're going to find then is a lot of these 10 out of 10 riotous freakouts are probably going to be 5 out of 10 freakouts brought back down. It's just like storytelling. It's basically a leadership role. You're taking control of the girl's emotions, you're bringing them up, and you're bringing them back down. At first, he's going to be doing these in a reactive sense. She's going to have her triggers, she's going to escalate, he's going to ride that escalation and then de-escalate it once it gets to physical altercations. Well, hopefully before then. Then, as he gets good at it, he learns to take a leadership role and direct them. In this case, there's a strategy I talk about, which is manufactured outrage. Start little fights, bring that emotion up to like a 3 or a 4, just normal person stuff, and then you bring it back down because it's some nonsense event you invented yourself. This is a much healthier way of building these emotional highs and lows, or managing this alpha behavior and the girl's anxiety for your own benefit. So what's in this for you? Well, there's 2 things to take away from this. First, if you've never had a girl, or the girl you're married to has never given these freakouts to you, and I've heard a lot of guys say, well, my girl's just not emotional like that, and fair enough. But if you've never had these kind of emotions coming to you from the girl you're with, well then you've probably never had enough alpha behaviors to get a girl's true best. There's an article in Rollo's book, The Rational Male, or his website, I guess, called Saving the Best, and it behooves guys to read this. Because this is what happens when guys don't know what alpha behaviors and desire really look like. You end up with a girl and she's not extremely emotional and she's more ambivalent towards you, even though you may be getting all the great lovey-dovey words about love and commitment and whatever. If you're not getting those, then you're not getting a girl's best. Because there's no greater aphrodisiac than anxiety. You can call it good, you can call it bad, but people are just animals at nature. And this is how they respond to these kind of things. You'll actually see a lot of guys, and this will matter for you too, if you're one of those guys who, for example, we have a bunch of field reports of this, guys catch their girls cheating and decide that they want to value their dignity and they start to leave her. The girl will go into what's called hysteric bonding, and I'll do a definition of this in a different video. It's kind of off topic, but what guys notice is that fear of losing their very comfortable man actually makes them sexually excitable, and they get some of the craziest sex of their entire life. This goes on for a couple weeks, because right now, the girl's feeling those alpha behaviors. The guy is very aloof. He's essentially checked out. Slap the wife goggles off his face. Another definition I'll give you in a future video. Those guys finally see the first hint of it, and they usually have a very common field report where they go, why wasn't she like this when we were together? It would have saved all this hassle. And that shows a guy's complete lack of understanding of female nature and relationships in general. This stuff has to come at the end of some kind of anxiety or fear of loss. So how does this matter for you? If you can't get those kind of emotions out of your girl, then you most likely are her safe second choice, when you could be her first choice. An alternative. The alternative is essentially what we've been talking about here. So we'll take it right from the start. Let's say Amber is one of those girls that's completely crazy, completely nuts. I can grant you that. A lot of guys have made that take. Well, that's fine. Realize, though, at some point, he decided to wife her up. Nobody seems to mention that part. It's really funny when you talk about the narcissism of MGTOWs and other unattractive men, or as Vox Day would put it, gamma males. Again, a description for a later episode. But they seem to make everything about them but blame. Now, I don't like blame in general because that's sort of how children sort things out. Children and women are worried about who's at fault and who's to blame. A very good masculine strategy for this is to assume it's always your fault and always your blame, because then that puts the focus on your actions and what you can do. And that's the only thing that matters here. In this case, what he could have done is done some very basic boundaries at the start. If he starts getting these hysteric, bonding, daddy issues, probably shouldn't wife her up. We're going to assume that girls on their best behavior can hold this off, and usually between 12 and 18 months is as long as we've seen it happen. So keep things casual, give them an opportunity to be crazy. And after a year, if you're not getting anything, then you can analyze and revisit the issue. Assuming we get past that first decision gate and you got a girl that's generally well put together, dad bought her that pony when she was 8, so she doesn't have any ill will towards men in general, and you into this relationship, this is where the problems happen. If you're that kind of guy who actually is attractive, acting like a high value male, and a lot of guys talk about alpha males, but they don't know what they're talking about. It's stuff like this. The point where you walk away when things aren't working for you, he has, say what you will about Johnny, he's got good frame. For a guy who got hit in the frying pan, he has good frame. But during these events, you're going to find out that if you actually are a man with solid frame, a man with an abundance of alpha mentality, an abundance of outcome independence, you're going to get more of these emotional outbursts. And this is where you have to work on what I call beta game. And this is comfort stuff. It's a huge topic. It would fill a video all on its own. But in general, think of the way a father treats his daughter when she's freaking out. Very loving, fatherly, reassuring gestures. In general, if you think comfort, think security, think beta. And those are the behaviors that are really going to matter when it comes to the point where you've actually built yourself up as a high-value man with plenty of alpha characteristics, and then you do run into these situations where girls are extremely emotional. Or you can get hit in the head with a frying pan. It's up to you. On that note, I'm going to leave it there. This is an absolutely fascinating case study, not because it's celebrity gossip, but because it's the length of it and the fact that these guys have that celebrity culture bit to it. It really amps everything up. So it's a very clear way to see a lot of things we see in a lot of people's regular person marriages just amped up to 11. But on that note, I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'll give a quick shout out right now. Patreon's been growing strong. We have the forums up. We're swapping notes amongst each other. It's a great time when we do our weekly Q&As. So feel free, join in, check it out. Price of a cup of coffee, definitely worth your while. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.
And you're justifying that by saying I throw pots and pans? Okay, cool. Let's talk about everything you do, Rob.
I'm not the one who fucking did that. I didn't.
So that makes sense. That's clear. Yeah.
The only time I ever threw anything at you was when you fucking threw the cans at me in Australia.
Why are you trying to justify who throws things